Chapter 433 Isn't She Alive? Mo Fan and Ling Ling split up. Ling Ling made her way to the police to gather information regarding the victim, and ask for more clues from the policemen and doctors that were in charge of the incident in the past. On the other hand, Mo Fan simply headed to the girl's house, to see if he could learn anything new from her family. The incident wasn't too long ago, it had only been 2 months. Mo Fan arrived at an old street, where the residents lived above the shops. To enter the house, he would need to squeeze his way through a small alleyway and find his way to the main entrance. The house had 2 floors. Its front was facing the street, filled with a few snack shops and a cozy, exquisite boutique. The second floor had some pots of flowers, with vines along the walls, which added some color to the aged house. It must be a comfortable place to live in. The house had a small backyard, with some grapevine trellis. The branches hanging on them were swaying gently in the wind. It looked like a suitable place for a family to live a cozy and happy life, yet the garden and the balcony on the second floor had piles of stuff used for funerals. Mo Fan was unsure why they were still there after 2 months, and it altered the appearance of the house. "Hello, is this Lu Xian's home?" asked Mo Fan. "Oh, it is. Hi, and you are?" A rather beautiful girl walked out of the house. She was wearing a polite smile, yet her brows were displaying a hint of sorrow. You. Mo Fan was dumbfounded when he took a clearer look at the girl. He pointed his finger at the girl and couldn't find any words. The girl stared at Mo Fan with a confused look, not sure why he would react like this. Mo Fan took a few steps backward. He was surprised, as the girl who greeted him was the same girl that Huo Tuo had mentioned was dead. Mo Fan had looked at her photo before coming here, so he immediately recognized her. He had also seen the death certificate. It was said that the corpse had been cremated, yet she was alive and standing right in front of him. Could it be that the legends were real? That those whose blood was sucked dry by the vampires would resurrect on the first full moon, and become one of them? The girl had a pale face, lacking the color of blood. Her lips were fairly pink and smooth, granting her a pitiful look which urged Mo Fan to feel some tender affection for her. Yet, it might only be a great disguise from the vampire. A female vampire? Didn't that mean she would be interested in handsome men like himself? "I'm Lu Xian's sister, Lu Ru. We're twins," said the girl, after she finally realized something. Oh, Mo Fan's lips twisted. Damn it, his imagination had been getting wilder lately. He should definitely cut down on the American TV shows. Twins. Oh, that scared the shit out of me. Mo Fan took a deep breath. The girl giggled when she saw Mo Fan's reaction, before she added, "You must be my sister's friend." Yeah, I heard the news," said Mo Fan with a nod. Mo Fan didn't reveal his identity as a hunter. Many commoners, including magicians, had no idea things existed in the city other than humans. There was no need to give them any unnecessary fear. Thus, most of the time during an investigation, Mo Fan and Ling Ling would use false identities. "The house is a bit messy. Let's chat in the shop here." Lu Ru didn't invite Mo Fan into the house, it being unwise to do so when she was home alone. Mo Fan nodded. He realized that Lu Ru was a fairly smart girl, but he was unsure what kind of personality her sister had, who passed away in the prime of life. Inside the small cafe, Mo Fan ordered a glass of juice for Lu Ru, and some food for himself. He was in a rush to start his detective work, so he had completely forgot about lunch. "I saw that your house still has piles of stuff used during the funeral. It has been 2 months. Why hasn't someone cleared them out yet?" asked Mo Fan. "There isn't anyone else in the family. Our relatives left after helping me out with the funeral. I also went away to divert my mind from the grief. I only came back yesterday, so I haven't had the time to clear them yet," Lu Ru said softly, with a hint of sorrow. "Only the 2 of you were living in the house?" asked Mo Fan. "Yeah, our parents had passed away a long time ago. My sister stopped going to school so she could work, just so I could continue with my studies." Lu Ru's voice was trembling slightly. Mo Fan looked at the girl. The brief sentences were enough for him to imagine the scene where the 2 girls were relying upon one another. They must have been extremely close. "I'll lend you a hand later. You won't be able to clear them on your own," offered Mo Fan kindly. Lu Ru shook her head. It was obvious that she didn't want to trouble him. She glanced at him and asked, "I've never seen you before. Are you my sister's colleague?" Mo Fan had already done his homework, who replied, "Not colleague, but her workplace is right beside mine, so we would talk occasionally." Oh, it's you. My sister did mention to me before. She said that you've always looked after her, said Lu Ru. Mo Fan knew Lu Ru was mentioning someone else, so he gladly played along. Even though Lu Ru still seemed slightly depressed, she had endured the most painful period, so Mo Fan cut straight to the topic. Did your sister die from a heart attack? I guess so. That's what the doctors told me, said Lu Ru. But I heard she was bitten by something, and she was suffering from severe anemia during the time, said Mo Fan. My sister has always been weak, and suffering from anemia occasionally. I don't think there's anything strange about that, said Lu Ru. I stumbled into the old man who sent your sister to the hospital. He insisted that he saw something. I'm quite curious, too. Your sister seemed well the last time I saw her, yet I was so shocked to hear that she had passed away from a heart attack. I did sense that she was panicking a little a few days ago before she passed away, so I asked her, and she told me something about a stalker. Did she tell you anything about that? Mo Fan directed the conversation in his own way. Lu Ru pursed up as she began to recall the past. A while later, she lowered her voice and said with glistening eyes, I've never heard anything about a stalker, but my sister did seem quite cautious a few days before it happened. 2 months ago, the weather wasn't as chilly, so I opened the windows when I came back from school, but she panicked and shut them. It seems like something did happen during those days. Mo Fan adjusted the glasses on his nose. Just so he would look more like a famous detective, he even bought a pair of glasses, of course. Chapter 434 What did she bump into? Are you saying that my sister's death is not an accident? Lu Ru's eyes had a rather complicated flicker. Mo Fan nodded before adding, that old man is a strong magician, so I'm sure that he's saying the truth. Besides, did you really think your sister was suffering from a heart disease? Lu Ru was immersed in her thoughts for a while before saying, it's true that her health wasn't great, but I only knew about her heart disease after she passed away. I found it unbelievable, too. I was actually quite bothered by it. I want to know the truth, so if you happen to recall anything strange about your sister, or someone weird around her, please tell me as soon as possible, especially if the person was a man, said Mo Fan. Based on the information provided by Huo Tuo, it turned out that only male vampires would harm a woman. They would always tail their prey for some time, or even make direct contact with them. Mo Fan assumed that any stranger that initiated contact with her prior to her death would be the most suspicious. If they were anyone, I believe you fulfill the criteria you've mentioned, said Lu Ru. Mo Fan felt awkward. It seemed like the person he was disguised as was interested in chasing her sister. However, they did serve as an important clue. He should investigate that person later, as he might obtain some useful information. Is there anyone else, apart from myself? Asked Mo Fan. Lu Ru shook her head. She glanced at her watch and said, it's getting late. I should be heading to school. If there's anything else, you can find me at Qingyuan Girls' College. Mo Fan knew he should not ask further, and proceeded to see her off. Not long after Lu Ru left, Mo Fan's figure transformed into a black shadow and swept past the vines. He quietly snuck into Lu Xian and Lu Ru's rooms. The rooms were filled with feminine things, pink, blue, and powder blue. The rooms had lots of dolls on the beds, the desks, and hanging on the walls. Mo Fan tried to search for clues with his discerning eye, but unfortunately, apart from a variety of lingerie, he didn't find anything interesting. Looks like I'll have to see if Ling Ling managed to find something useful, he murmured. Mo Fan soon met up with Ling Ling. The corpse was cremated a long time ago. If it were preserved, it would be fairly easy to tell if she were attacked by a vampire. Who would have thought that these concealed creatures were coming to our country? Aren't the churches responsible for keeping an eye out for them? Said Ling Ling. Well, did you learn anything useful? Asked Mo Fan. Ling Ling flipped through the pages on her laptop and said after organizing her thoughts, every document is stating that she died of a heart disease. There was nothing strange about her death. There was nothing fishy about the death certification, either. To be honest, if Huo Tuo didn't insist that he had witnessed her death, I'm sure that the incident wouldn't even be considered the doing of a demon beast. No wonder no one was willing to take the quest. It sounds fairly tricky, as we don't really have any clues. Besides, if the vampire was only picking on a random girl, it would be impossible to locate him with all the people in the city. This is such a headache, agreed Mo Fan. I've already gotten the recordings of the surveillance cameras at the subway. I didn't have time to look at them yet. Hopefully, we'll find some clue from them, said Ling Ling. If we really couldn't find anything, I guess we'll have to talk to her sister Lu Ru again, said Mo Fan. I guess that's the only choice we have. Mo Fan and Ling Ling played the recording of the surveillance cameras at the station where Lu Xian died all of a sudden. To prevent themselves from missing any details, Mo Fan and Ling Ling even decided to visit the same station at night, to repeat the incident by tracing her path at the same time. The station was not too crowded at night. At the entrance of the station, the stairs leading to the underground was completely empty. It felt quite sinister under the gloomy light, yet they could hear some weird metal clanking in the distance. Mo Fan, did you realize? Most of the lines are no longer running at this time. The last train departed 5 minutes ago, which means everyone would have boarded the train 5 minutes ago. Lu Xian should know the timetable, too. Why would she bother going into the station? Asked Ling Ling, while carrying her laptop. The laptop was currently showing the combination of different scenes captured from every camera. They could see Lu Xian slowly walking into the station in her heels on the dark black and white recording. There was no sign of anyone else in her surroundings. Ling Ling was mimicking Lu Xian's footsteps by following her trail from the recordings. Wherever Lu Xian walked to in the recordings, Ling Ling would follow her path, and even mimic her actions. It was a commonly used tactic by the police for investigation. Most hunter agencies in cities had also mastered this basic technique. Indeed, the last train has already departed, yet she's still going into the station. It doesn't even feel like she's trying to catch a train, said Mo Fan as he pointed at Lu Ru's sister Lu Xian, who looked exactly the same as her. Then she must have been lured into the station, interpreted Ling Ling. It's very likely. We'll look for the surveillance cams that captured the moments before she entered the station. There are shops and traffic lights nearby. Maybe we can find whoever made contact with her before she entered the station, said Mo Fan. It suddenly feels slightly creepy. If a vampire is capable of seducing his prey, commoners would have a hard time protecting themselves, said Ling Ling. Mo Fan recalled the bewitching magic spider at Jinlin Desolated City. The creature also had the ability to manipulate the mind of its prey. The vampire was able to hide in the city and feed on humans. Thus, it would not be a surprise that he had similar methods of manipulating his prey, too. This vampire is a lot smarter than the demon beasts we've encountered before. If Lu Xian was actually attacked by a vampire, it also proved that the creature knows how to fake his victim's cause of death. As long as the victim is diagnosed to have died of a heart attack, the case would never reach the hands of hunters. In other words, the vampire would have no worries. There are millions of people in this city, so it's nothing strange that a few have died in accidents. Mo Fan, look! She suddenly stopped in that spot, as if she had just bumped into someone, yelled Ling Ling. Chapter 435 A Special Fetish. Mo Fan asked Ling Ling to replay the recording. As she had observed, Lu Xian suddenly came to a stop halfway, but Mo Fan still could not see anything in front of her after taking a closer look. Mo Fan saw her take a few more steps forward. The place did not have much light, and the girl slowed down her pace in the shadow, coming to a stop. Unfortunately, a huge pillar was blocking most of her figure. It seemed like she was using the pillar as a support as she was trying to catch her breath, like a patient suffering from a disease breaking out. However, after replaying the recording a few more times, it felt more like something was grabbing onto the girl, preventing her from moving. After quite some time, she seemed to be worn out, as if she were suffocating. Her body stiffened as she slowly fell to the ground. Soon after, the surveillance camera caught Huo Tuo rushing toward the girl in a panic. He did not inspect her condition, but seemed to be chasing after something. He was yelling furiously at the empty station. Following that, Huo Tuo carried Lu Xian out of the station, but he could not get her to treatment in time. It looks like he did see something, said Mo Fan. I've already checked the recording. There's no one hiding by the pillar, yet when half of Lu Xian's figure was blocked by the pillar, it did seem like something was grabbing her. Mo Fan, you're a shadow magician. Do you think someone might be using a shadow element spell to hide behind the pillar? The recording is in grayscale, so it's hard to tell if the shadows were moving, analyzed Ling Ling. It's possible. Places like subway stations would have plenty of shadows, so a shadow magician could easily move between them, Mo Fan nodded. Those were all the clues provided by the recordings, basically confirming that the culprit had abilities of the shadow element. Mo Fan and Ling Ling paid the man whom Mo Fan was disguised as a visit, but they discovered that he was only an ordinary shopkeeper. He did not provide any useful information. Without a lead, Mo Fan and Ling Ling had no choice but to head to the girls' college where Lu Ru was studying at, to see if she could provide any more useful information. Otherwise, it was impossible to proceed with the quest. Mo Fan had just learned of the existence of the girls' college in Shanghai. The place seemed to be educating nurses, stewardesses, and models, hence, there were lots of gorgeous students. The people nearby referred to it as men's heaven. Mo Fan deeply agreed with the saying. Just a few keywords were enough to trigger his unlimited imagination. Mo Fan saw a class full of beautiful girls when he found Lu Ru's classroom. He almost forgot why he was there. "Are you looking for Lu Ru?" She went back to her room as she suddenly felt uncomfortable, probably because of her period, said a rather blunt girl. The girls nearby giggled when they heard her words. One among them, who was fairly busty, said, "No one would have a period 3 to 4 times in a month. I bet she's sick because of messing with men too much outside of the school." "Don't say it like that, her sister has just passed away. We're only stating the truth. She has been occasionally asking for leave, and always says no when asked to see a doctor. God knows if she's contracted some disease." It was obvious that Lu Ru was not well received in the class. On second thought, it seemed fairly reasonable. Lu Ru had a delicate and pretty look, and a good physique. Her melancholy appearance was urging someone to give her tender affection. Mo Fan did have a good first impression of her, and it was quite common for girls like her to be excluded by a group of bitches. Mo Fan decided to pay her a visit as a friend. Most of the students were in class at this time. The dorm was under the supervision of an elderly woman, yet Mo Fan managed to sneak inside with the help of his shadow element. Lu Ru's room was located at the end of the corridor, close to the woods outside of the dorm. Mo Fan did not barge in straight away. He knocked on the door politely. "Are you skipping classes again?" "Huh, it's you?" Lu Ru did not seem well, and looked quite surprised when she saw Mo Fan. "I want to ask you about something, but your classmates told me you were sick, so here I am paying you a visit," said Mo Fan. "I'm fine, thanks for your concern. Besides, I've already met the friend my sister mentioned beside her workplace, so please stop disturbing me," said Lu Ru with an alert look. Mo Fan was startled. He did not expect his disguise to fall apart so quickly. He let out an awkward smile, and when he was about to explain himself, Lu Ru had shut the door closed. Mo Fan left helplessly. The situation was rather grim, and it felt extremely difficult to complete the quest. They had no leads at all, and even if they could prove that Lu Xian had died after being bitten by something, they had no chance of capturing the vampire. After meeting up with Ling Ling at the school gate, Ling Ling immediately asked about his progress. "Say, Lu Ru has been unwell recently, could it be?" Mo Fan speculated wildly. Mo Fan's eyes gleamed. Her classmates did mention that she was having periods, which could be linked to anemia. Perhaps she was not falling sick, but the vampire was secretly sucking her blood without her noticing? Huo Tuo did mention that most vampires have their own fetishes. Lu Xian and Lu Ru were twins, so it's likely that the vampire's fetish is twins. Therefore, after getting his hands on the elder sister, he has now come to prey on the younger sister, interpreted Mo Fan. "So we can find the guy by keeping an eye on Lu Ru," said Ling Ling. Mo Fan felt an urge to give the smart Ling Ling a kiss after finding a glimpse of hope to complete his quest. Unfortunately, Ling Ling had already seen through his motives, and blocked her red face with her little palm. "Please, I still plan to marry in the future," said Ling Ling, her face full of disdain. Mo Fan uttered a hollow laugh. Mo Fan and Ling Ling waited until nighttime. They were crouched in the bushes outside of the fence, hoping that a hare would kill itself by crashing into a tree trunk while they waited. Nothing happened on the first night. Lu Ru stayed in her room. Even her meals were brought home by her roommate. On the second night, there was some movement in the woods, but it turned out to be some student having a secret date with some guy from outside of the school. Can't they find a room? Mo Fan crouched in the bushes while hearing the out-of-place voices coming from the close distance. Luckily Ling Ling was not around, as it was surely not the best scene for her to witness. During the second half of the night, Mo Fan felt like falling asleep, but he suddenly felt the presence of the shadow element lingering in the air. Mo Fan quickly gathered his focus. The fish had taken the bait. Chapter 436 I'll Give You My Heart. Mo Fan was a shadow magician, so he could easily detect a stronger than normal presence of the shadow element. The shadow element resembled darkness, and ordinary darkness would be driven away by light easily, yet real darkness could absorb light like a black hole, without any glimpse of light. The light from the school was gloomy, but normally the rays would still scatter through the woods. However, the woods were in complete darkness at this time, and would turn into walls of darkness if the place were slightly darker. The walls of darkness did not stop one from passing them, but those inside them would lose their sense of direction and return to their original starting point after taking a few more steps. He's an expert of the shadow element. I have to find him. Mo Fan carefully concealed himself in the zone of darkness and waited patiently. Mo Fan initially thought he would catch a shameless culprit who was trying to infiltrate the girls' dorm red-handed, but to his surprise, the guy did not seem like he was planning to trespass into the dorm. He was only maintaining the dark zone to conceal himself perfectly. Mo Fan had no choice but to remain patient. It was obvious that the enemy's shadow element was significantly stronger than his, so exposing his presence would only drive the enemy away. Two fangs that were worth 20 million RMB. Sometime later, Mo Fan suddenly heard movement from the room at the end of the corridor. Mo Fan immediately glanced at the balcony and saw a seemingly delicate girl climbing down along the water pipe from the balcony. "Isn't that Lu Ru?" Mo Fan yelled to himself. It was indeed Lu Ru, who looked extremely weak. Mo Fan felt like she would fall in any second as she was climbing down the pipe. Either way, she managed to make it to the ground. She opened a gap in the chain link fence and easily snuck out into the woods. The woods were covered in darkness. Her slim figure was soon devoured by the darkness as she ventured deeper, as if she were about to disappear without a trace. Mo Fan's heart sank when he sensed that the girl was approaching danger. Damn it, the vampire has already bewitched Lu Ru. She must have been unwell because the guy has already been sucking her blood for quite a while, cursed Mo Fan in his heart. As the protector of young girls, Mo Fan would not tolerate such an act. How dare the vampire use such a shameless method on the young girls he was protecting? Lu Ru was walking right into the trap. Luckily, Mo Fan was keeping an eye on her today. Otherwise, he could not tell what would happen to her. The vampire was more than cold-blooded. He had already sucked the elder sister dry, and now he was already preying on the younger sister Lu Ru instead of laying low. Mo Fan was not in a rush to make his move. He had still not seen the vampire. His eyes were still fixed on Lu Ru, as his shadow element allowed him to have a clear vision in the dark. Lu Ru was still heading deeper into the woods. She was wearing a blank face, as if she was sleepwalking. As she arrived at a small clearing in the woods, the outline of a coat finally appeared from the darkness. The coat was bright red, its collars up. The person's sharp jaw and the side of his face were concealed by the collar, with only his pointy nose and strangely glistening eyes exposed. Mo Fan could not see his face clearly, as a strange mist was concealing it. It was most likely a common method used by the vampires to hide their faces, as they could not afford to expose their appearances if they had to hide among humans. Lu Ru placed her hands behind her back as she slowly walked toward the man in the coat. A strange mist was lingering in the darkness, with a unique pleasant scent. The delicate Lu Ru stood in front of the man in the coat. She slowly raised her head, like a pretty maid in order to present herself to the emperor. The man in the coat slowly spread his arms wide, like a man on a secret date giving his lover a simple hug. The bewitched Lu Ru took a step forward, diving into the man's hug. Meanwhile, something flickered between the lips under the man's collars, something sharp. It turned out to be two exposed fangs reaching the man's jaw, the fangs that were worth 20 million RMB. Mo Fan groaned inwardly. As he was about to make his move, he suddenly saw something emitting a cold flicker in Lu Ru's hands behind her back. A cold dagger was drawn out from her back. Her eyes that initially had a blank expression flickered with hatred, as she raised the dagger in her hand and thrust it at the firm figure in front without hesitation. The dagger stabbed deep into the man's chest where his heart was. However, there was no sign of blood pouring out from the man's chest, as if the dagger were stabbing at a corpse. Mo Fan was stunned. He did not expect Lu Ru to make such a move all of a sudden. She had placed her hands behind her back. Mo Fan was not aware that she was actually hiding a silver dagger. Tisk tisk. What a surprise, to see a commoner like you able to resist my lunar charm, uttered the man in a sinister voice. He remained standing in his place. The dagger punctured his heart, yet he did not cry out in pain, but was talking to Lu Ru in an intrigued manner. Lu Ru quickly took a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with anger and hatred. Such a pity, the legends you were told about vampires are fake. It's useless thrusting a silver dagger into our hearts. Oh, if you are so fond of my heart, I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything that you like, to show how much I like you," drawled a sinister voice. Soon after, the man in the coat spread out his claws and grabbed at his heart. His claws tore his chest open, revealing a bloody hole, from which he grabbed his heart. It was a fresh heart, still beating audibly at a fast pace. The heart had a silver dagger sticking into it, without any sign of blood. "I've already given you my heart. You won't find any man that's perfect like me." The man's tone was eerie. Lu Ru was still an ordinary girl after all. Despite the overwhelming wrath in her heart driving her to avenge her sister, she was terrified and subconsciously took a few steps back after seeing the vampire's abnormal actions.